Welcome back to Good News Baltimore. Today, we will be taking a deeper look into the school-to-prison pipeline epidemic. Joining our discussion is Joseph Tullman, Professor of Law at the University of District of Columbia. Professor Tullman has pioneered special education advocacy for children in neglect and delinquency systems as Director of the Juvenile and Special Education Law Clinic. Thank you for joining us today.
It's my pleasure.
According to the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU, the school-to-prison pipeline refers to the policies and practices that push our nation's school children, especially our most at-risk children, out of the classrooms and into the juvenile and criminal justice systems. This pipeline reflects the prioritization of incarceration over education. Can you enlighten us about your personal perception of the pipeline?
It probably helps to think of the pipeline as going from a shallow end to a very deep end. And it's useful for people to think about each part of the pipeline. So the pipeline really starts in school. It goes through the child welfare or neglect system, into the delinquency system, and into incarceration, and the deep end of incarceration in both the delinquency and the criminal systems. And at every point in that pipeline, we're just doing stuff that's dumb. We're making policy decisions and operationalizing our work in a way that pushes a lot of kids out of school and onto the streets, from the streets into the incarceration system. There's an amazing study out called Breaking Schools Rules, and they took 3 cohorts of 7th graders from all across Texas, every 7th grader in Texas for 3 years. And they looked at the rate of suspensions and pushing kids out of school, and 61% of kids in Texas got suspended at least once. And the amazing thing is that over 97% of the suspensions were for what we would call discretionary stuff, not what we think of as serious criminal behavior or violent behavior, but disrespecting a teacher or cursing at somebody or just minor stuff. And they found a number of things that are really important for people to know about. One is that, as you might have imagined, it's incredibly racially discriminatory. So black kids, brown kids, much more likely to get pushed out of school for the same kinds of things that white kids aren't getting pushed out of school for. Controlling for every variable you can imagine. If you throw kids out of school, you suspend them, even once, you're increasing dramatically the likelihood that that kid's going to repeat a grade in school, that the kid's not going to finish high school, and most awfully that just by suspending kids, you're increasing the chances that the kid will end up in the delinquency system. And at every stage, as we get deeper into the pipeline, poor kids, kids of color, and kids with disabilities, they get treated worse. So that's kind of the school-to-prison pipeline.
Okay, wow, thank you.
Not so good, right?
Not at all.
Not at all.
Pretty alarming.
Yeah, no, it's bad.
Okay, Professor Tullman, small infractions of misconduct in the past that would have sent a child to the principal's office or guidance counselor is increasingly causing them to take a trip to the police station. What underlying factors are school administrations neglecting to address, resulting in higher forms of criminal punishment?
I think there's been this move over the years towards this notion of zero tolerance, that if we get tough with people, that results in better behavior. It's a misguided concept. You walk into a school, you can tell right away if it's one of those oppositional environments. People, adults roaming the halls in uniform and yelling at kids. I think what administrators in high schools and middle schools and elementary schools are missing is that what works with our kids works with kids in school. You really want to be nice to kids. You actually want to focus on their strengths, not on their deficits. And boy, there are all sorts of things that are already in the law that people just aren't doing. I guess the question is, why aren't we doing it? Why aren't we following the law? And it's sort of ironic when you say, well, we're really getting down on kids for not following the law, and here's a bunch of adults who aren't following the law. Let's say if you're a principal and I'm a teacher, and so we're running this school with 500 kids. We're budgeted for, I don't know, make up a number, $10,000 per kid or $12,000 for every kid in special education. And you know, as the principal, you're saying, well, I need this many teachers and I need this many other staff people. I don't have money to pay a bunch of psychologists to do functional behavioral assessments. It's not in my budget. Right. And if you look at it that way, it's true. But we, for lack of spending a little bit of money on psychologists doing functional behavioral assessments and helping develop behavior intervention plans, you know, we're spending tons of money throwing kids away in the deep end of the system. So we really have to get our act together, take that money we're using to throw people away. It's really expensive to incarcerate people and to prosecute them and treat them like criminals. And if we took that money and put it where it's needed in the schools, we could do things that really work. I think administrators are missing that all over the place.
Exactly. Build as you climb, lift as you grow.
There you go.
What results and regulations have you seen school administrations adopt that are in fact pushing our students into this school to prison pipeline?
Yeah. Congress passed the Federal Special Education Law in 1975. It's a really good law. And what Congress found is that we were pushing kids out of school who had disabilities, and that a whole range of disabilities, learning disabilities, emotional disturbance, intellectual disabilities, traumatic brain injury, you know, any neurological, just a whole range of disabilities. And Congress figured out that if we keep those kids in school and actually get them educated, we all win, which again is common sense. If we educate every kid, we all win, because then from an economic conservative perspective, we're not spending extra money supporting those kids when they get older. We're integrating them into the economy. Everybody wins. And so the thing is, if you don't educate a kid properly, most kids are either going to act out or act in. You know, they're going to shut down or they're going to start misbehaving. If a school administrator is going to get a kid arrested in school, and the school is then required to transfer to the court that kid's discipline records and that kid's disability records, and the people in the court should look at that and say, what's going on with this kid? Why are you pushing this kid out and into the court? And you know, a lot of times it's going to be because you're not doing what you're supposed to do with the kid, and the court should push them back.
They're not finding the correlation.
That's right. They're not looking for it, and they're not following the law. It's just one example of not following a law that's a pretty good law. And if they look, they would see that most of the time, these are kids with unmet special education needs getting pushed out. Another example is, if you look at most disciplinary codes in school, there'll be some rule that says, if you're going to suspend this kid, you can't put the kid out of school until you've figured out if the kid actually did what you say he did. Why are you putting me out of school if you haven't shown that I did what you say I did?
Right.
So as a lawyer, I'm looking at that and saying that's a violation of basic due process to put the kid out before you've even proven he did anything. If you have to put him out because it's such a volatile, dangerous situation, maybe there's an exception. Right now what's happening is if they want to suspend a kid, they uniformly push the kid out, and then we'll prove that you're guilty later. Right? So it's not innocent till proven guilty. It's guilty until you come into your hearing. Everywhere you look, there are those kinds of what a friend of mine calls compliance gaps between what the law says you're supposed to do and what we're actually doing.
So we are actually implementing such a high level of discipline that's, you know, creating some discomfort for the children.
Yeah.
Tell me what you believe some of the emotional and social, you know, ramifications of us enforcing such high levels of discipline.
This is an astonishing thing. America locks up, according to the Annie E. Casey Foundation 2008 data, 339 children per 100,000. The next highest country is South Africa, again, not a surprise, at 69. So we're almost 5 times higher than the next highest country. And so part of it is for people to stop and think, are our kids that much worse than kids anywhere else? We're 5% of the world's population and 25% of the world's incarceration population. So we're really off the rails, and that filters down into the schools.
There's social assistance that's needed, there's extra education, but we're unable to do so because of staffing shortages and statutory mandates.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
So I think you're right. We perceive that we don't have the resources to provide individualized experiences, whether it's music or art or job training. So what we should be doing is with every kid, we should be, among other things, involving that kid in some internship, some job opportunity, whether it's at a restaurant, learning the whole business, or whether it's learning a landscaping business, something that fits with that kid's interests. And that's going to take a fair amount of individualized attention, but you know what? It works. Every kid finds a mentor, an adult mentor somewhere. So even the most low-functioning clients I've seen, and some of the kids who are in the most trouble in the delinquency system, they found somebody to teach them how to do the things they're doing, right? I have clients, how did they get a gun? Somebody taught them how to get a gun. Somebody taught them how to steal a car. Somebody taught them how to sell drugs. Now that adult or young person who's almost an adult who taught them that is not the person we want mentoring that kid. Why not have somebody doing pro-social, good economic activity mentoring that kid? And if we think it's expensive to put that adult in position to do that, it's a lot more expensive not to do that, because then we spend all the money throwing people away.
What about the federal and state level? What's being done and what could be done to a higher level possibly moving forward?
There's been a positive development, a small positive development in some states. In the District of Columbia where I work, I'm happy to say since 1993 we've closed 3 incarceration facilities for kids. And over 500 beds, and we've gone to 2 smaller ones for a total of 148. So we're beginning to see that. On the federal level, there's been much activity in the last year or 2 from both the Department of Education and the Department of Justice in issuing guidance and policy statements about the school-to-prison pipeline. Now, I'm pleased by that, but I'm not that pleased, because all they're saying is, why don't we follow the law?
Right.
And the law has been there for quite a long time, and I'm a little impatient with the federal government. It's like, let's not just tell people to follow the law. Let's go out there and force people to follow the law.
Well, there's a fire inside of you, sitting next to you, as we speak about this cause. What makes you so passionate about this cause? I
think on the one side, it's seeing so many kids who have so much potential just being chewed up and thrown away, ground up and thrown away. And systemically, to see how unfair the system is. Racial disproportionality, racial discrimination permeates our delinquency and criminal system. And I think we've had very little dialogue about that nationally. I think with the explosion from Ferguson and what's happening with the Garner case in New York, recently you're seeing more of a dialogue, but it's not yet getting to the root causes, and it's not getting to the expansive nature of the problem. It permeates our criminal system. It permeates our delinquency system. We think we're getting tough on crime, and what we're doing is making crime worse when we treat kids as adults.
Well, I just like to say what you are doing in our community is phenomenal.
Thank you.
We really do appreciate you being here. On behalf of myself and my team of Good News Baltimore, we thank you. And
did I give any good news?
You did. You gave us a lot of wonderful feedback. At least it gives us something to think about, and it gives us a charge to go out there and be proactive and mentor and start making some change in our community, one person at a time.
Good. All right.
Wonderful.
Let's do it.
Thanks for joining us.
Sure, my pleasure.
We'll be right back with Good News Baltimore.